So are the Boston Bruins gonna be terrible next season? Before we get into the video, I'd appreciate if you hit a like, comment down below, and subscribe if you have not already. When we reach 5,000 subscribers, we'll be doing a $100 gift card giveaway to those people that are subscribed and have the notification bell active as well. Let's get into it. The Boston Bruins have seen a lot of turnover. Some notables: Patrice Bergeron has hung it up. David Krejci looks like to be doing the same. And they also traded Taylor Hall. This Boston Bruins team is in a state of transition. They don't have a proven top-line center, and offensively, it looks like things might take a step back. Yes, they have a superstar in David Pastrnak, but one player does not make a team. So let's look into the forward group and kind of break down where we think things shall go. Now, I think Pavel Zacha with David Pastrnak could work out. I also do believe Charlie Coyle, with his puck possession style of play, could work with Brad Marchand especially. But let's just go with the cap-friendly lines. These aren't written in stone, but let's look at it. Brad Marchand, Pavel Zacha, and David Pastrnak. I think that's a very good first line. Marchand, while the season went on, he regressed a little bit, but he's still a star caliber forward. He had 67 points in 73 games played. So for a first line, that's not terrible on the wing. The question mark comes in with Pavel Zacha, who had a notable bump in his play last season. Can he take another step and become that #1 center they're looking for? Well, the Bruins hope that to be the case. Looking at the second line as currently constructed, they have Charlie Coyle, JVR, and Jake DeBrusk. Now, Jake DeBrusk is the X factor on this line, in my opinion. DeBrusk played fantastic before the injury, played very well after the injury. If he can become around a 70-point scorer, the Bruins season is looking a bit more optimistic. Now, I think Charlie Coyle in his second line role, that's not where I'd like him to be. I think he's a perfect third line center. But maybe he can prove me and some other Bruins fans wrong. And JVR at $1 million per year, he didn't have a great season, didn't play a whole season, but maybe he can recapture some of his magic. And then on the third line, I don't think AJ Greer is going to be full-time. I don't think that's how it's going to work, but currently they have Greer with Morgan Geekie and Trent Frederic. I think Frederic was a bit overpaid, but he showed a lot of improvement last season and had his best year statistically as an NHL player. He's 25 years old. Can he take another step and maybe around 40 points and give the Bruins the much needed depth they need with their scoring? And Morgan Geekie, I liked what I saw from him with Seattle. I think there's a bit more there, but even if he just stays around 30 points, maybe 40, depending on his wingers, that's not a bad third line center. And then for the fourth line, you have fan favorite Milan Lucic coming back with Patrick Brown and Jakub Lauko. Now, Jakub Lauko really impressed me last year. I think he's got a promising future in a Bruins uniform. Will he be a top line winger? Maybe, maybe not. I think he could be at the very least a solid third liner, but he's got a good skill set, and I loved his tenacity in which he played with. And with Brown and Lucic, hey, maybe that's a match made in heaven. I would actually move Lauko up to the third line if they were going to go with these players on the roster over Greer, because I think Lauko gives you far more offensive firepower. But before I go into the defense, I think there's a few key notable players I'd have to mention. Merkulov for the Providence Bruins last year was fantastic. I think you gotta give him a look. He's only 22 years old, but he has a very good shot, and he could be exactly what the Bruins need in the middle six. You gotta start giving these young players a chance at the NHL level. And as for Fabian Lysell, that Bruins fans are really excited about, talking to some scouts and people that know more than I do, they think he might be another year away, which isn't a bad thing. He's only 20 years old. Let the guy prosper at the AHL level, so when he hits the NHL, he's fully ready to go. And John Beecher has been in the discussion for that fourth line center role. I don't think that's going to be the case with Patrick Brown being signed, but hey, you're hoping Beecher hits at the NHL level. He is only 22. His upside is not that high. He's looking like a fourth liner for an NHL player, but maybe he could surprise us. Now, going into the defense, you have Matt Grzelcyk with Charlie McAvoy. Charlie McAvoy is a tremendous defenseman. Grzelcyk played really well last year as well. McAvoy will be the captain of this team most likely. Maybe not this year if they give it to Marchand, but when Marchand eventually retires, He has everything you want from a Boston Bruins player. And then you go into the second pairing with Hampus, Lindholm, and Brandon Carlo. You kind of get into the strength of the Bruins. This D-core, the top four, is very, very good. Brandon Carlo is a load to play against, and him and Lindholm are a match made in heaven. And then in the third pairing, what they have slotted here, Forbort and Shattenkirk. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Shattenkirk defensively, but Forbort's okay in this spot. I think at $3 million, he's a bit overpaid. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Bruins try to shop him around and maybe try to bring a depth defenseman back. But if that is how they're going to go with things, it's not a bad decor at all. I think the top four is very solid, more towards the top end of the league. And the third pairing is serviceable. But I do think there's some notables on the decor you have to mention in the prospect pool. Zaboral, as Jack Edwards says it, so don't get mad if I pronounce it that way. I don't think he's a viable NHL option at this point. He's 26 years old. He's been in the system. He's making $1.1 million, but he's a seventh defenseman at best. It's just that draft pick hasn't worked out. I think it's time you cut ties with him. But in the system, you got Mason Lohrei, big defenseman, 6'4", has a lot of upside. They did bring in defensemen like Alec Regula and Ian Mitchell. I'm not as sure of those players. I haven't watched the Chicago Blackhawks system closely enough. They look like solid third pairing defensemen from scouting reports that I've seen. But yeah, defensively, the Bruins look strong. And then they managed to bring both goaltenders back, which I do think is a mistake. I do think bringing both goalies back is a mistake. Now, listen, I'm not saying to get rid of Jeremy Swayman. I think Ullmark, this is the best year he'll ever have of his career last year. He was playing on a historic team. I think it would have been far more prudent to trade Ullmark at the height of his value. Looking at this tandem of Ullmark and Swayman, even if Ullmark regresses to his career save percentage of .919, that's still a quality goaltender, and Jeremy Swayman's still young, only 24 years old. It's a one-year prove-it deal, and he has shown some promise. Can he take that next step and show the Bruins that he is indeed the goalie of the future? So looking at this roster and how good they were last year to compare to this, is this Boston Bruins team terrible? No. It has definitely gone down in quality from last season, but I think there'll be a lot of close games. I could see them maybe slipping into a wild card spot, and the reason for that, in my opinion, is I'm just not sure of the centers the Bruins currently have. Zacha played some wing and some center last season, and yes, he showed some really good improvement, but can he be a first-line center? I'm not sure. Charlie Coyle, they've given him the opportunity to be a second-line center in the past, never really worked out. He's perfect in that third-line role, even though he's a bit overpaid. Can he be a second-line center? Has he learned? Has he developed? I'm just not sure. Morgan Geekie, I think, at the third line is slotted perfectly, but I think the problem with the Bruins, when I'm looking at this roster, I don't see a number one center. And this might be a controversial take. I'm not sure if I see a number two center as well, but hopefully both of those players prove me wrong. I'm hoping Coyle and Zacha have fantastic seasons. But for me right now, there's just too many question marks for me to put them anything higher than a wild card position. But I'd love to know your thoughts down below in the comment section. What do you think of this current iteration of the Boston Bruins? Will they be a top 3 Atlantic team in the wild card, or will they miss the playoffs altogether? I'd love to know your thoughts. I'm Captain Paul, and I'll see you in the next one.